Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Effort RPG show with Alex.
And Joe.
And hey, if you're joining us today and you're super perceptive, if you've got that high wisdom out there, and you make your perception check, you may notice that we have a special guest star on our show today. And if you don't know her, she's smart, she's crazy talented, she's lovely. The founder of the Arcane Library,
Head librarian.
wildly successful businesswoman, member of the Runehammer Council of Mages, contributor and collaborator in some of the Runehammer products. Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, it's Miss Kelsey Dionne. Kelsey!
Hi. I'm so glad to be here.
Hey, we're so glad to have you. And hey,
Right?
I gotta say, pal, it's good to see you.
It is good to see you. I know. I think the last time I saw you was actually in person.
Correct. Last month, we
Mhm.
just got back from a very special wedding.
Bum,
Yes.
bum,
And
bum, bum,
and,
bum.
and I don't want to invade old Hanker and Furnail's privacy, but surely for the listeners, for our little vodcast here, what juicy details do you think we can give up, or just some details? It was lovely.
Yeah.
It was lovely, right?
It was one of the most like personalized and just very like sweet weddings I've ever been to. Like which fits because Hankrin is a creator who must, I think, customize as much as possible. So of course there's going to be nothing generic about this wedding.
I
It,
bet.
it was just wonderful. Joe, we're sorry you couldn't join us. It was wonderful,
I
but
know.
I
I
have
missed it.
yeah, I have a secret confession, and that is truthfully the best part of the wedding for me. Honestly, was just hanging out with you, Kelsey.
I
It,
know that was the best. It was like we kept talking during it all. And Joe, we missed you so much. I know you couldn't make it, even though you would have been lovely to have there. But
I would have
um,
loved it.
I know you were there with us. We were trying to represent. So we were laughing, and I think everyone there was laughing about how the best part of the wedding was that Hankrin brought together this group of people who are so just like such a natural friend group. And like me getting to see you, Alex, and like spend time in person, like it was just such a like it was a highlight. It was a highlight of my year, honestly. It was so lovely.
likewise, and then honestly, today I really want to showcase you in the Arcane Library, but my ulterior motive, Joe, is I really just want to see Kelsey again.
I know, right?
I really just want to
Want to
talk to
say
her again.
hello.
We don't get to do this enough, I know.
Right?
That's right. Well, hey, we're gonna dive into all about you, Kelsey, all about the Arcane Library and all you've got going on. If you'll indulge us though for a second, I do want to shift to Joe because
Mhm.
he just got done running this awesome game for the Moldy Crew. And Joe, if you would just tell us a little bit about the game and
Right.
and I mean really your setup because it was a little bit unusual.
Yeah, it was a little different. The starters was, we've played, the moldy guys. Alex is one of them. Chuck, Dennis, X. Um, we've played a lot of one shots, here and there. We do filler games when one of us can't make it. And so this one, instead of just starting off with like just those bare bones, like, new characters with that new character smell on them, we were like, let's go with like a full 12 points, add in your bioform bonuses, and then take 4 milestones on top of all your starting stuff. So like they were kind of like a little higher, more epic tier guys. And
With 4 milestones
I
plus starting ability and
yep,
that awesome piece of starter loot.
yeah. So
So
like
that
these were some beefy, folks.
yeah.
These
Nice.
were like I guess to parable some new stuff. These were kind of like some She-Hulk monstrosities. They were awesome. They were epic. Don't
Well,
sue us, Disney,
well, and
please.
I just have to say, Joe, in terms of your challenge tuning, you were spot on. My character had a 19 armor class. I took regeneration, 1d6 hit points every round as one of my special abilities. I took ultimate damage pretty much with my World
Yes.
Breaker sword that could never be lost.
plus your basic effort.
Plus I had +6 to basic effort, which then got added to all of my weapon attacks. Joe kept me at 1 hit point for most of the night. I was perspiring the whole time. And the other 2 characters, so Dennis's guy was the range guy with the, take another shot every time you hit a 15 plus. Yes. So he would chain these attacks. Xander was playing Durandal, his
epic mage,
his council mage, with tons of spells and his ability to literally curse anybody with all sorts of maladies, yes. Like your
Curse of Ord, excellent spell.
Yeah, like your hands are suddenly stuck to your knees, kind of stuff. Yep. And Joe, I was sweating. Joe, in terms of that regen ability, I counted up. I absorbed over 86 damage.
Ooh,
over the course
tasty.
Of the whole night. And you crushed it. We had to stop this awesome ritual. We had to beat back these giant troll-like things. And somehow we managed to survive. In any event, I just want to say, Joe, you ran an amazing game. Anything else you want to add about that game? Because it was killer.
Yeah, actually I do. I know we'll be getting into this later, GM prep and what to do when you're starting things. That's all my notes. That's it. Oh, wow. That's everything I had for it. I had the idea for like the room designs. My list of bad guys: Beetlemen, ogres, cultists, Medusa. In parentheses, a little question mark next to it, I put Predator, because I was debating the whole time. I had the tokens and the green blood off to the side. I was like, I could spin this into throwing a Predator right out here. The new movie's out. It's epic. I was like, I could do it. So I had that there. And then I've got just my couple little notes about what the hooks are and what we're looking for. And then my quick small stat block for my Medusa or my Gorgon.
Oh yeah, you also nearly turned me to stone too. So thanks for that.
Hey, I did have a note. I do also have a note down here. Medusa blood cures stone? ? So I kind of thought like, hey, maybe there's a way that if somebody does turn to stone, like, could that be a possibility? Of course, I was completely open to any other suggestion. Like if you guys had an idea of like, oh, well, I'm going to do this, or if the epic mage, if X or if Xander was like, I've got this spell, right? I can like reverse the entropy. I'd been like, do it. Oh. Barking, cool.
I'll put a bleep in post.
Right? I should have bleeped myself.
You can always bleep.
Well, Joe, that is, man, it was a great campaign, and so I had to give you a shout out because you just crushed it, dude. You crushed it.
Oh, real quick, for anybody that actually saw that screenshot where there was like, I don't know, 50 or 60 like minions descending on them as they made for the temple. Those were the lowest mooks. They were like glass jaw heavy hitters. I mean, it was just D6 damage, but I was spawning 1d12 from 2 different locations. So total 2d12 every single round. They all just had 1 hit point. And I was waiting the whole time for you guys to start, just hitting them or something. But the kiting was brilliant. You guys kited them around the whole map to save everybody. It was awesome.
There were way too many bad guys to engage. It was terrifying. It was terrifying.
Yep.
You guys are both like encounter design masters. And I mean, I'm serious when I say this. I learn something from you both every time we play in a game. And like, I have so many questions. I'm like, how did you, because don't you feel nervous when you go into an encounter that appears to look overwhelming?
Right.
But yet it's somehow like, I don't know. It's impressive that you can run an encounter like that and just have it be like the perfect amount,
Well, I'll let you in on a secret. They weren't the only ones sweating. Every single time I'm in the GM chair, I'm sweating bullets, wondering like, is this going to work? Am I going to kill everybody in the first 5 minutes? I've done it before. I don't want to do it right now.
We've had our moments.
But... I sweat every time. Every time I'm nervous about it.
Well, Joe, you crushed it. We made ridiculously high-level characters, and it was a brilliant evening from beginning to end. So, thanks, man. I just wanted to showcase it because it was awesome.
Hey, it's the beauty of ICRPG.
Yep, it is. All right. So, on to our special guest, Kelsey Dionne. And I have to say, Kelsey, your reputation precedes you a little bit. In terms of, you've been described, in terms of your evocative writing, your unique game master friendly presentation in the documents you created in your adventures, which we're going to talk about and dive into some of those. It's amazing, and this sort of short bullet format that just works. You've gotten critical acclaim for some of your work.
Award-winning.
And I think it's still the case, Secrets of the Skyhorn Lighthouse on the DM's Guild may still be the highest rated adventure ever. At one time, it was over 100,000 plus downloads. It's probably gazillion more at this point.
Yeah.
And so
It's surprising.
No,
And it's so good.
It's quality. It's so good. I mean, eel folk. Am I right? So
Gotta have those slimy eel men in there.
right. Am I right? But so your reputation precedes you. But here on the Ultimate Effort Show, we want to hear about your origin story. How did you get started in the hobby? What are your roots?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. This is actually something that I've only recently started talking about because it's, I thought it was kind of an ordinary start to the game, but I see now in hindsight that I actually have a little bit of an interesting backstory with D&D that is unique to me that I loved considering. And so, I started playing when I was a kid, and I was in maybe 6th grade, and my friends invited me to come play in a game at this new game store that had opened in our hometown. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll come. And I walked in, and it was like, a crowd of 6th grade boys and then me, but they were all so welcoming. Like, I'm very lucky, and everyone was so kind and welcoming. And we started playing, and it became like an every Saturday thing for me going forward. And I immediately got hooked on D&D. Like, I wanted the books for my birthday and got them, and I've joked about this before. That was the summer that I suddenly needed glasses because I went in the basement and read these D&D books all summer and was like, I can't see. I came out and literally couldn't see, poor lighting or whatever. And
I love it.
That was the origin story essentially. And to me, that seemed ordinary in a way. Like, I think we all kind of got our start perhaps around that age with our friends, but what I now realize in hindsight was really special about all that was that I grew up in southern Wisconsin, and I was about 45 minutes north of Lake Geneva. And this was in the early 90s, mid 90s. And my dungeon master was playing in Gary Gygax's weekly game. And I was surrounded by the people from TSR who would come through the local game stores in southern Wisconsin to visit or like make appearances. Like, Gary Gygax came and ran a game at the store one weekend, and I didn't get to play in that one, unfortunately, but I know. And like, Gen Con was still in Wisconsin, so we went every year, and like Gary went to it. I met him there. Wow. And so I just was so lucky that I was steeped in the culture of D&D just kind of by dint of where I grew up. So I've been able to carry those lessons forward, and I think it helped shape my opinions about D&D and how I like to write. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's
Talk
amazing.
about getting bit by the radioactive dice to
I
gain the
know.
powers.
Right.
I didn't know this. Like, I only learned maybe like not even that long ago that my dungeon master was a regular player in Gary's games. I didn't even know that. But now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that makes sense because of how he would run the games and what he was running for us and stuff.
That's
Awesome.
awesome.
When did you make the transition to the DM chair?
That was during that same time period because our DM, we were in Wisconsin, and he got snowed out one weekend. Like, he lived a bit farther out of town, and all of us local kids were able to somehow get to the game store, but he couldn't make it. So everybody was looking at each other like, well, what do we do now? And I was like, well, I'll run a game, and everyone, because no one wanted to run. And I was like, well, then I'll do it. And so
You
I
stepped
took my
up.
pizza money. Yeah.
Right?
I went and bought like a little like one-shot adventure downstairs and came up and I honestly kind of winged it. Like, I read through it for maybe 10 minutes and totally winged it. And I had an absolute blast, you guys. Like, so much fun and getting to kind of improvise and work with the material. from the start, I loved it. And so then I started to be like, well, maybe I can do this some more. And it blossomed into a regular thing. So
That's awesome.
it's fun.
That's my secret, Captain. I'm always winging it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Winning
right.
it worked so well. Yeah.
Epic.
Well, how many games now would you say you've DM'd? Like, can you even count?
I've never even thought of the number. I mean, it has to be hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours worth of gameplay at this point. So, and I'm still learning every time, right?
Always.
Yeah.
All of us, we're all climbing that ladder.
Yeah, you made the comment that, games that we've all played that you've learned from both of us, like equally, I have learned from both of you guys. Like, there's always stuff to learn every single time. I know it's right. It's like, wait a minute, which way?
Where are you?
Work? Where do I go?
Yeah, like, oh, Kelsey did that cool thing. I'm going to plagiarize this. Oh, Joe did that cool thing. I'm going to plagiarize that.
Right.
I do that for you guys too. I'm like, that was so, and like, there are times where I think like that was so well executed that I almost am like, was that even planned? But I know in some cases it was,
So what do you think is your favorite game you've DM'd?
Yeah.
Which one stands out?
I mean, it's hard to pick. I love running for you guys. I know I say this in private a lot, but it's not even sometimes the game or the setting. It's the players that make it, and so you guys are such spectacular players that I'm spoiled when I get to run for you. So that's definitely up there. I've run games that I really treasure for friends just because of the like high school friends and some friends from places I've lived where you're introducing people to the game and you get to see their sort of like wonder as they're stepping into role playing for the first time. And it's like how we felt when we first started, I'm sure. So I have a lot of fond memories of those kinds of games too.
That's awesome. That's
really it's hard to pick.
It's also a beautiful moment when you see like that new player, like they almost come in like they're a little overwhelmed at first. And then when like that moment where they're like, oh my gosh, I can do anything. And when you see that moment as a game master for, on the face of a new player, you're like, oh. I mean, it's I don't know, it's a wonderful feeling when you see somebody like when it clicks and you're like, this dude is hooked for life.
Well,
right.
Well, and I think for me, so insightful, Kelsey, as always, but it's just like, it's not the game, it's the people. Like that, to me, that's awesome.
The game is the people. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, if we right to bare bones, like the people are the game. Like,
can't separate it. It's a social experience, right?
Exactly.
Yes. And I mean, does a good system help? Absolutely. That just magnifies the joy everybody experiences. So like, I think it's no small coincidence that some of our best games and some of the ones I am most fondly remembering were Index Card RPG. It's because it's a spectacular game that makes those, it knows what about the game is fun and emphasizes those. So that's a huge factor too. But people is the number one factor.
Really cool.
Well, certainly.
Well, all right. Well, let's shift gears here because I've already talked up how amazing you are in terms of the Arcane Library.
Oh gosh.
I want to hear the origin story for it and how it got started. Yes. And in particular, what kind of made you, well, I'm thinking I'm stealing Joe's question, but how you took that leap? Like, why did you decide to start writing adventures and then more importantly, to go into business on your own? It had to be scary.
Yeah, it was a little scary, and I actually was really like, I didn't think I could do it. I had been trying to figure out, I love writing and it's what I studied. And I think Joe knows this too, that when you're a writer, you're trying to find your niche. Like, do I like writing fiction? Do I love nonfiction? Do I want to write short form, long form? And I had been struggling with that, kind of trying to fit myself into a box of being a long form fiction writer. And it just wasn't really what I was loving. So during that time, I had started working in like a tech career because a writing degree isn't really going to get you out there so easily in your 20s or whatever. And so I was working in IT, like in corporate IT in New York City. And I didn't really love it, to be honest. It wasn't really what I felt made for, right? So I was just doing it because I needed a job and writing on the side. And I remember working on like some long form fiction and then being like, oh, okay, I'm glad I got my words in for today. Now I'm going to write some D&D, and it took my now wife telling me, she was like, I like what you're writing, but you seem like you're really excited to write D&D stuff. Like, it seems like that's what you're drawn to. Like, it never feels like pulling teeth to you. And I was like, well, yeah, I love it. It's my favorite thing to write. Which is, I don't know why I didn't get it, and she was like, well, why don't you do that? And I was like, no. Like, you don't get it. The internet has told me when I Googled it that you can't make a living writing D&D adventures, and it's a silly dream and no one can do it. And she was like, well, I don't believe that's true. And my wife is such a doer. Like, she can make and do and achieve anything, which is something I've always found so impressive about her. Like, she just does not feel the limitations of convention. And so she took me to a coffee shop one day and sat me down with a notebook and was like, we should make a plan. You love writing, and we're going to make a plan. We're going to add some business mindset to it right from the start because you want to take it seriously. And we hashed out a whole plan one morning. And then the next couple of months I spent writing my first adventure, which is The Secrets of Skyhorn Lighthouse. It's the first one I ever published. It's not the first adventure I've written, but it was the first one I published.
Right.
And it
It's
took
amazing.
off.
It's amazing.
It's a record-setting bestseller.
It just came in. I think it came in at a good time. And during the writing process, I had decided, like, I don't want to follow the ordinary format of D&D because to me it was so impenetrable. Like, it was very hard for me to sit down and read the conventionally presented, like, dungeon magazine stuff and all that. And I was like, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to do it my way. And I was sure nobody would like it, and people would be like, get your unconventional crap out of here. But no, I mean, people actually liked it, and it took off, and then it became kind of out of control. Like, I was juggling my IT work with the writing, and the writing was like getting bigger and bigger. And then there was a moment where I was like, I could make the switch and be okay. And that's what I did. That was a long story.
No, that's amazing.
It's I mean, you could say it's a long story with this massive list, if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me, from Skyhorn Lighthouse to Demons and Devils, a double adventure pack, the Bundle of Horrors Volumes 1 and 2, both have 4 adventures in them, Masque of the Worms, Valley of the Gilded Tower.
Oh, Joe.
The list is so long, it's freezing Joe out right
Yeah,
now.
right. Exactly. It's crashed his internet.
Oh, no. Oh, no, Joe. He's doing me a great kindness of listing my entire back library, I think, which at this point has grown. It's grown over time. Are you back, Joe? Are you back?
Am I back? I
Yeah.
don't know what happened.
Joe, we lost.
Kelsey's
giant library crashed your internet.
Oh, no.
The weight of the words. Oh, am I back?
You are.
I think you are. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm not sure where I got lost, but I was at
Don't do it again. No, I don't know.
I was at the Bundle of Horrors.
Yep.
It started again.
It's too massive.
It's too many words.
There are too many awesome products.
Oh, no.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Joe and I wrote them all down.
Wow, I am honored that you did that.
It's amazing.
Huge number of adventures. I don't know if I'm back, but yeah, huge number of adventures. All of the cards. There's so many cards, like different card packs. ArcaneLibrary.com. You can check the list out for yourself. It's epic. Or Drive Through RPG. Look up Arcane Library. I just won't go back into the list because I break my internet.
Mm-hmm.
It
Exactly.
seemingly does that.
Also, yeah, I mean, I think this count is probably wrong, but there are over 20 at this point. Full adventures ranging from character level 1 all the way through. I think you even have stuff for level 20. Primarily for a 5e crowd right now. Mm-hmm. But I think they're all universally written to the point that they could really be adopted in ICRPG or whatever your favorite system is for the most part. They're just so accessible. I think for anybody, it's an amazing catalog. I got to ask Kelsey. I'm going to talk about my favorites, but what's your favorite in terms of your babies? What's your favorite work?
It's tough. I do think about this sometimes. I think that that I'm really proud of is Temple of the Basilisk cult, which is actually a giveaway for free. Which it was so hard because I was like, I love this one so much that if I give it away, I think people will see that I think it's the one of the best examples of my work. And when I wrote that one, it kind of just it's one of those things that just flew out without much effort, and that's how I knew it was a good one. And so I was like, this is the one I want to share out to people so they get a feel for what I'm doing when they join my newsletter. I really do like that one. Man, I like I wrote one kind of recently that I'm really fond of, which was Devil's Peak. It's what is it called? That was its working title, and I'm like, what was the actual title? I think it's Night on Devil's Peak.
Yeah, Night on Devil's Peak. Yep.
Yes. I need to know my own stuff. And it's funny because, oh yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that's the one with the awesome village generator at the end. Villager generator. If yeah, like Appendix D, like go get this adventure just to roll up cool NPCs in the village. Like it's amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
I love it.
The fact that you know that, thank you.
It.
That's a little. Those are. I love making those generators because how could you possibly make enough NPCs in a village that are like
that are
specific
that are interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Right?
Is the big thing.
Yeah,
the interest level is off the charts
but yeah,
with
that adventure is. I mean, it's dope. It's so dope.
Thank you.
I love it.
And it's one of the most unconventional ones I've written because it's events based, which is like really difficult because D&D is about like open-ended exploration, and that adventure sort of forces the players to be contained, but hopefully willingly in this location, and then take events that aren't just things that happen, but things that hopefully the characters can impact from one event to the next, so that it's not not a train track, to use the proverbial term, but like I think that one was both really challenging to write, but I'm also really happy with how it came out as far as that goes. And it's based on the Fantasia movie. Have you guys seen the Disney movie Fantasia? Yeah. And I was like, I have to write this like ode to Chernabog, who was the big demon on the mountain in Night on Bald Mountain. I was like, I have to write something that incorporates this guy because he's like this mythological demon. And so I was really happy that he was like the central bad guy.
Right.
Who never gets into direct conflict with the PCs, but who the PCs are trying to sort of stop. So
I love it. I love it.
A visible, massive entity.
Scary.
As the cymbals crash and the strings rise.
Yes.
Full initiative.
I love it. Well, and you mentioned Temple of the Basilisk cult, which is a freebie. That's Joe's favorite one.
Yeah.
Really?
I know it's, I went to, like all of you should do, I went to arcanelibrary.com. I signed up for the newsletter. It's right there at the top. And you get yourself a free copy of Temple of the Basilisk Cult. And I do have to say, like, I have almost all of your stuff, but that's my absolute favorite because just reading it, I was like, this is tickling all those proper notes for my pulp adventure, for my jungle temple, for the ruins, for the cult, for everything. Like that one, like I get excited. Like it ticks all my boxes.
We love pulp. Like you and I think are both like major pulp jungle. I could write only for that genre and be happy.
Yes. I love that genre. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Well,
it hits all my Indiana Jones and my librarians and Alan Quatermain and
I have several favorites too. I love Watchers in the Dark. I mean, what a great start to that. Meteor crashes, craziness ensues, people go underground. There's a crystal shard, which immediately gave me Crinshinaban kind of vibes, if you follow the Legend of Drizzt and all those great stories. I love it. I love that one. I love the Monastery of the Shadow Sorcerers. Like, how awesome is it to just make your way through a cool monastery and fight monks and epic. But my favorite, you guys will probably laugh at me. My favorite is Beneath the Black Rose. and I'll tell you why.
Yes.
Because you start in a tavern. It's so classic. instantly there's an innocent in peril. This little girl knocks on the door, right? And she's being chased. And then you end up going under the tavern, ultimately, to uncover the mystery. To me, that's just that hits all the right notes. It strums all the strings. To me, that's a perfect one. I love it. I love that one.
Thank you. That one was so fun.
It's a
I
great
like
one.
that one a lot. People mention that one is probably was their favorite sometimes, and I'm really glad to hear that, because I wasn't sure if like another site-based, because the characters have to decide, to engage. Like they could just be like, I slammed the door in the little girl's face, no adventure. But hopefully, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah, if you're actually a hero, like I think you'd have a hard time being like, "Bye, kid, I'm going back to bed."
I know.
Yeah, my thought is, slam the door in her face. Okay, Game Master, I'm about to embark on some PvP.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Well, and if they do, they get a special penalty for that called a ghost flies through the door. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Well, I love that one. All right, so in terms of your style, though, as we mentioned that before, all of these adventures in your catalog, they're laid out in this super simple format. It's so easy to grok and grasp and understand. It's so easy to implement in terms of taking a product to the table and having a deliverable for your players to maximize their enjoyment. I love that you have these bullets with these easy digestible chunks. It's we've arrived at it probably in separate fashions, but it's how I live my life. I love it. And then of course eat it up in your products. You have all these developments that are so easy to follow for folks. Here's a development. And then here's the dramatic or dynamic questions for people to answer. How did you decide on that formula? How did you decide on the bullets? How did you decide on, here's the development, here's the dramatic questions? Tell us, enlighten us. You talk about some of this in YouTube in terms of adventure design, but how did you decide on this format? I think it's amazing.
Thank you so much. It was probably the hardest thing to come up with as far as adventure writing goes, which is funny because when I was first writing The Secrets of Skyhorn Lighthouse, my first adventure, I actually rewrote it from scratch 3 times. It's definitely the adventure that took me the longest to write because I was developing this format and I wanted to create something that I knew I could spiral out into future products. And so I was really meticulous, and I think what I primarily did was I first wrote that adventure like in the typical style. And I looked at it and I was like, I wouldn't use this. I literally was like, I would not use this myself. And my litmus test became, what would I use personally? What would I want to see? And it took a lot of cutting, like a lot of chopping, a lot of formatting. And I just ended up kind of almost like taking the Cliff Notes version of my own adventure. And how would I write this if I wanted to use it at the table, which for a lot of people used to be a separate process, right? Like you'd have to highlight or take notes or make bullet lists to remind yourself of what you just read so you could actually use it. So it really organically grew out of how would I try to make this usable for myself. And, and at the end of the day, it's kind of simple. It's like you have bullet lists of what the characters get to see and know right from the start. And then you separate out the secret information for the GM. Like a lot of times those are merged together. And when you make, and like you use that format, and then you always try to identify what about the scene is interesting, which is where the dramatic question comes from. And I can't take credit for that idea. It came from screenwriting and also from a really influential article I read by this online character named The Angry GM, who talked about this. And he really brought the idea of a dramatic question in D&D writing onto the table as a legitimate approach, to writing. And so I was like, yeah, like screenwriting technique, journalistic writing technique, which is what my degree is in, kind of where you're focusing on the impact and you can let the chaff go. Like there are things that you want to include, but that you don't need to include. And so you don't have to. And that eventually turned into the format we see now, where the last bit there where I was like, okay, a lot of times I'll finish an encounter or be close to finishing an encounter, and then I won't know how to push it into the next bit. So then I include a transition at the bottom that kind of tells you like either here's where you'll go next or here's how to do a really quick cutscene to get to the next part that matters, and let the cutscene just, cover the boring bit and sweep you along.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent stuff.
I mean,
it definitely works because you can literally take any of these, open it up, and run it directly to the table right out of the book, right out of the PDF at the table with like zero prep.
Well,
it worked.
They were
yeah, it works, and I think that's where a lot of adventure writers miss. For two reasons. One is they never think about accessibility. Let me, as a matter of customer service to you as an end user of my product, try to make this as accessible as possible, to make this as easy on you to bring this to the table, in this busy world. Like, I think that's money. The other piece is I think there's a danger for writers in that they become so enamored of their own written work. And let me just tell you, if you're writing all these paragraphs, the only person who cares that you've written all this stuff down is your mom. She's the only person who will read Precious's, entire 600 paragraphs. She's the only person who will read every single word and care. The rest of us, our eyes glaze over after 5 minutes, and we just want to get to the meat. And that's what I think is just so remarkable about what you do, and in terms of your service to your customers. Like, it's just brilliant, Kelsey. Like, I could go. I mean, we could just go on forever about how great your catalog of work is. It's so good. But
thank you.
So it's great. Everyone should go check it out. Like, let me break the fourth wall. You should go check it out. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears now, because adventure writing is not the only thing you're working on.
Ooh.
Are there any special projects that are happening?
There is actually
that you can talk about.
Right, I know. Some of them I can't.
Right,
but
I know.
But some I can. And the one that is, I think, for me most exciting is that I'm working on an RPG. I feel like it's a rite of passage for game designers where they're like, I have to at some point design an RPG.
Yep.
Because it's sort of our thesis statement on what we find most important and love the most about role-playing games. So yes. I ended up doing this. It's a game called Shadow Dark RPG. And I literally, this is the first time I'm saying this out in the open. I put the last word to paper 2 days ago. It took me 2 years, and I have just finished writing the draft.
Yes.
Awesome.
So you guys get to hear it first out in the open that it's done. And I lay out as I write, which is a habit I picked up from Hankrin, which has been invaluable. So
Me too.
I know. It's great. It's great because it really, it's a huge, it helps. The amount of space you have greatly impacts what you can say and how. So, yep. So I just finished it, and it's now getting its final rounds of art. It has one more round of art commissions that are going out. And it's really a dungeon crawling focused version of the original rules of D&D. And it's obviously been influenced by modern, really excellent, like index card RPG, some dungeon crawl classics. And it takes dungeon crawling as the focus and makes a game around it that feels like D&D. Like I wanted it to feel like an edition of D&D. Mm-hmm. So it uses some of the game's conventions that, like 6 ability scores and armor class, hit points, like weapon attack rolls with dice of damage. Yeah. And I love running it. And I am so excited to get to play it finally, like share it with people and play it. So I think I'm going to be launching it in March of the coming year. So.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That is great.
That actually answers one of the questions I had, which was, what's one of the goals in the next year that you see for the Arcane Library?
That's the big one.
Apparently it's a book.
Yes.
It's the whole shebang.
Big old book, I know. And it's obviously been in playtesting. You guys have probably unwittingly helped playtest it when I've done stuff for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk about that.
Yep.
I know. But it's been, so many, 2 years of playtesting, redesigning, rewriting. And you can, I have the free quick start rules out now that are like set in stone. They're through their final playtest phase. So Those are out for free because I really want people to feel like they can try it and see if it's for them. So those are on my website too.
Now I'm trying to remember the playtest kit or like the quick start rules. That's the one that includes all of like those amazing like pre-gen character cards and everything, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's the one.
Perfect for convention play. That is an amazing looking set.
Thank you. And that's the digital version you can get. You can get the print version, which I try to sell most like at cost essentially. But the digital version of that is free, and it has like a 64-page player rules book, 64-page game master book with an adventure, a whole adventure in it, and then those pre-generated characters. So hopefully it's all you need to play multiple sessions of the game.
So it's amazing.
Epic.
Yeah,
it's so good.
And I think I've heard you say, Kelsey, correct me if I'm wrong, but this really is the game that you wanted to play. Like when you think back to your past, kind of growing up, like this sort of is the version of D&D or RPGs that you've always wanted to play, which is sort of my take, on Altered State. Like that was a sci-fi cyberpunk game I always wanted to play. I think the same is true for you, right? Like this really is your labor of love, your love letter to the sort of game you've always wanted to play.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And like it's so funny because I feel like no creator can call something of their own their greatest work, but it's my life's work because it's my life thesis on role-playing games. So it's putting out there what I find the most important and want to emphasize. And so, whether or not it's the greatest thing I ever put out or not, it's I think the most telling about what I believe about this hobby that is the center of all of our many waking thoughts.
Well, and the end goal, right? The end goal is a hardback book. I mean, there will be a digital version, right? But the end goal is a hardback book. Do you have an early page count? Can you spill the beans of what?
I exactly have it now. As of a couple days ago, it's 332 pages.
Amazing.
Big one.
Well,
that includes the covers, so that might not actually count. But
I think
I'll just say, Joe and I've seen the early drafts.
Yeah.
You shared it with us a little while ago, but
get you the newer one.
What we have seen, folks, it's amazing. Like
really is.
It's really cool. It's a really cool take. Sorry, Joe. What were you getting ready to say?
I just had some like minor mediocrity. I was to say like maybe just add one more page because 333.
I know.
I'm just saying it would be even.
It'd be one of those art commissions.
Three threes.
Maybe like we're sending that page separate because it's not divisible by 4 and a big no.
Curse you and your signatures.
I know.
Signature, the stack of pages form up a book. Sorry.
This is library speak right here.
Yes.
Right.
So,
man.
So all your adventures, and you're still working on adventures. It's not like you've stopped, but you've been putting a ton of time into Shadow Dark. Mm-hmm. It's coming.
And still putting out new adventures.
Yep, it's coming. But I also want folks to know, too, in terms of your website, there are other products available. There are all kinds of cool item cards. I think monster cards, spell cards. There's swag, which is great. I happen to own an Arcane Library hoodie. So there's merch, hoodies and t-shirts and hats and all that cool stuff. Exactly. But there's also, and they're all super high quality, but there's also what I think is one of the best gems out there. People should go get it right now. Joe's, we've been staring at it the whole time, but it's this little guy. The mini DM screen.
Yes.
Look how amazing this screen is.
It was upside down.
Yeah, it's upside down. Thank you.
I mean, you can hold that away.
This screen.
Yes.
And what's the best part about it for me, because you love doing those little tables, is the NPC name generator.
Yes. Oh my God.
Like, it's so great. It's so great.
Lifesaver.
It's a lifesaver. I keep it beside me all the time. All the time.
I have to, like, it might be, I don't know, maybe to my detriment. I don't know which way players actually enjoy. But until this beauty showed up and I had like these good names to use, the majority of my NPCs all ended up being like classic rock stars. Like, I'm pretty sure I've got players that are sick of getting, like, just tired of getting, oh, great, here's another John, Paul, Ringo, and George. How many times are we going to get them?
Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
Right?
I know.
Right?
Yeah, we have.
How many Robert Plants can you have, Joe? Just one more.
What is your name? Because I have one because I cannot come up with names on the fly either, which is why I put these on here. Mine was always some version of Gregory. Like, it was like Grigor or Gregor or like Gregel or like, like that is so when you see one of those, I made it up immediately. Like, my biggest weakness. Mm-hmm.
It's all of us who are DMing for a long time. It's just like, because invariably the PCs will be like, well, what's his name? And it's like, you got me again.
It's Broger.
Bob.
Right. That's, I doubled down on this problem too in Shadowdark because for me it's a huge problem. So like, I made a huge list of player character names in the book that you can roll randomly on, and then a completely different list just for the game master that has no repeats. Okay. So hopefully that'll help people like me who have this severe problem.
Well, that's killer. Well, can you give us any other Shadowdark kind of sneak peeks like that in terms of what folks can expect?
Yeah, well, sure. To go back to, I'm sorry, I'm like so excited about it.
It's awesome.
I'm so excited about it. I keep forgetting what I'm supposed to be saying.
Oh no!
Thanks for catching me up on some of those questions there, Alex.
You're welcome.
I've been enamored.
We're improving at this point. No, it's I'm trying because I think one thing that I learned from Hankrin, our mutual genius pal here, is that I think that the game mastering section for a book might be its most impactful, and maybe its most universal. And so I haven't really shown any of the game master chapter like very much at all, except what's a small slice in the quick starts. But the game mastering chapter is not going to be much except a massive generation tool for like dungeons, environments, cities, people, NPCs, adventure hooks, rumor ideas, events that happen to spur on your characters. So it's really just a massive toolkit. And by far the hardest part of the book to write was these D100 tables. I mean, it's technically 50 entries per, but of complex encounters by environment. So I was like Arctic, swamp, jungle, every type of city quarter you could need.
Love it.
Like marketplace, artisans district, like mountains, grasslands, and it's complex encounters that have a pull to them, like a dynamic thing happening for each of those environments. And I think there's something like 25, and it's like over 1,000 entries. And it's not just like, 2 elephants. It's like a mother elephant protecting her baby elephant from 2 saber-toothed tigers, or it's like something of that degree of complexity. So
some gravity and weight to the decisions at hand.
Right, like something to spur. Right. Like
now you've got skin in the game.
Yeah, and like a thing happening. Like you want the encounter to, and I know we all agree, the encounter has to have something dynamic about it that makes people want to engage with it. It's not just like 2 skeletons. It's like, it's something much more complex than that. And my sincere hope is that even if people don't play Shadowdark at all, that they can use that whole chapter in their game as just this massive toolbox,
That's awesome.
For any fantasy RPG.
That's
so
awesome.
Good.
That's so good.
So good.
I cannot wait. And it's going to have a bestiary too with monsters, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of 240
right?
monsters.
Plus spells, right? And all your sort of unique take. Well, it's the stuff that you like.
Yeah, I was trying to take the classics and some new stuff and make them as simple as I can while kind of maintaining that old school D&D feel to them.
Yeah, I think that's a very apt description. Yeah, guys, it's just killer. It's gonna be killer. Like we're so excited about it.
Big time.
Thank you. Me too.
So I have to ask, in terms of products, we've talked about it.
Yep.
Where does the Arcane Library go? After Shadow Dark releases, where do you go? Like, what do you see as sort of maybe your 5-year goal, or like what's the plan? What can we expect in years to come?
Gosh, I think that where it's headed right now is I take a lot of inspiration from companies like Goodman Games, who I think is a fabulous. I love everything they do. And they have this really strong like fifth edition D&D publishing side, and then their own game that they heavily support. And they do so much to build community and write fantastic adventures for their game. And I kind of feel like I'm taking a similar path where we know sixth edition D&D or whatever it's going to be called is coming. That got announced just a couple days ago. And so there's always going to be this huge audience for that version of the game. And I do want to keep writing for it because it's the kind of the backbone of the industry and a way to reach people and a cool rule set unto itself. But then I also see kind of having half of my efforts or a huge portion of my efforts going towards fostering Shadow Dark, writing for that style of the game, which is very different from modern D&D, and supporting the player community and the writing community too. Like I want, I know as all of us are third-party publishers, we have all experienced the challenges of like dealing with licenses and what can I use, what can't I use, and I've tried to make Shadow Dark just very much like you can pretty much use all of it and publish your own work and be happy. I want it to be easy and make people be like, this is a breath of fresh air. I can write the stuff I want to write and not be like limited to publishing it only through a certain outlet or with all of these caveats. So I want to support that.
Not worried about Mattel banging down the door.
Right. Like, cease and desist. Like it just shouldn't, I just wish it weren't that way, and one of the things I'm actually most known for is writing an article explaining how the open gaming license works to people. Yep. It's like the biggest article on my website. And so clearly it's very confusing, and I don't want that to be the case for people with what I publish.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's definitely awesome. You made you talked about the importance of like the community building, and I just want to do a little callback to people are the game. And that's a great focus with the community effort and with that newsletter on arcanelibrary.com, which you should subscribe to because the missives from the library are great, packed full of juicy stuff, but also the community. You've got a thriving Discord community with a lot of I'm part of it. Alex is part of it. We pop through, and there's just some amazing people in there. And you've fostered this really supportive and creative, just large group of people,
the 600, right? Like almost 600 people. Is that accurate?
It is, and it's not even like an open link. Like you can't. Yeah. I have people reach out to me to join because I'm trying to keep it a happy place for everybody, and not just have people swoop in from the internet and raise trouble. And so yeah, it's like 600 people, and honestly, the community members on there are so creative. Like there's some writers in there who I'm so grateful that they want to write for Shadow Dark because they're just amazing. And I'm like, how am I so lucky that you're a part of this community? And
oh, wow.
Right. I really love them. Tath, I know, absolute, mad genius levels of writing. And he's been doing so much flagship stuff. He wrote the first setting for Shadow Dark RPG. It's already out, and it's called Soulblight. And when I tell you, sword and sorcery and majesty and dark magic and grit, he pulls together this vibe that is very, very hard to achieve, and he does it beautifully, and I absolutely love reading his work. It's like reading some kind of apocalyptic lost section of the Old Testament that also has gaming rules,
right, that's got dice involved.
Yeah, it's so cool. Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful community. It's really, really well nurtured and supportive, and that's an amazing thing all in its own right, aside from all of the wonderful adventures and game products and Shadow Dark itself.
It's so great. Everyone there is lovely. We don't fight in there, so when you come in, know that we do not argue or fight. It's been a really lovely, mutually happy place for everybody.
Yep. So you're on Twitter. Arcane Library, Facebook,
Hmm.
Instagram.
That too.
You have an amazing YouTube channel
Yes.
with not just showcases of your adventures and tips on running them, but also tips on adventure writing.
Yep.
And I think at last
Full section.
yeah, I think at last count you have over 8,000 subscribers on
Like, where'd they all come
YouTube
from?
And
Like-
climbing.
and climbing. I mean, Kelsey, is there any limit to your success? I don't think so.
Oh,
But
no.
but for people to check you out, there are tons of avenues for folks to find you and to get involved, and then of course the Arcane Library website itself.
Yep.
It's just really awesome, pal. I couldn't, I'm so thrilled for your success, and
Thank you.
I can't. I just can't say enough good stuff about you.
Right.
Oh, you guys, thank you. You guys are instrumental in me keeping going and feeling like I have more to say, more to write, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and so I want to shift gears here a little bit real quick before we talk about our burning questions, just so this video doesn't go crazy long. But I do want to talk about some of your work for Runehammer Games too, because you've been a frequent contributor to Runehammer. A lot of people don't know since way in the beginning.
Yeah.
And Joe and I were trying to remember in terms of your contributions. Was Blood and Snow one of your first?
Yeah, that was the first one.
Yeah.
It was.
How did?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I think it was Blood and Snow was the first. The first step in.
So how did,
as far as writing or contributing?
how did that come about? How did you find Hank or Hank find you? How did that orbit collide?
Oh, it's so funny. Like, this is a life lesson for me because I am such a wallflower. I'm a very like shy. Like, I don't really reach out to people without having enormous amounts of like perseverating about it. And I had been watching Hank's YouTube channel forever. Like, you know, my wife would come home from work and I'd be like washing the dishes with the YouTube channel on the TV and like cackling about stuff she had no idea what was going on. And his channel was instrumental in shaping how I approached my writing. Like when I was in the research phase, like I watched everything he ever said and I agreed so strongly with it. And so I published Skyhorn Lighthouse. Things started to go really well for me. And I sent Brandon a message. Do we have to bleep this? Is that his? He has a lot of pen names.
Right?
Old Brandish Gilhelm.
Yeah, I know
right.
Brandish.
Ingrid Bernal.
His pen names are so specific and abounding, and I love them all. And I sent him a message just thanking him and saying, you know, here's what I wrote. Like, you know, you helped inspire this. And he wrote back to me, which I was not expecting at all. And he had read my adventure and said how he liked it and thought that what I was doing was a really neat approach. And so he invited me onto his YouTube channel for an interview. And like, I was walking like on like, I think I was on like in the Upper East Side, New York City, where I was working. I was walking to go get a burrito for lunch and I saw that and I was like, oh my God, like Hank just wrote back to me. Like he's a real person and he likes my work. And I called my wife and I was like, you'll never guess. And
Oh, I love
and
that.
so I got to do that. I was so psyched. I got to go on his channel and we just, you know, he invited me to work a little bit on Blood and Snow after that conversation, which I was so grateful for. And we got to do that. I got to write some adventure. I think I wrote the adventure in that, in the book, you know, with his guidance. Like he had kind of the creative vision and then I was like helping create the mechanical side and all that. And so it was very collaborative and really fun. I was so nervous too because I was like, what if he thinks my writing is stupid? And he's obviously, now we know he's nothing but supportive and excited and genuine. And it was such a fun experience. And you know, that's how I met you guys then. So
right.
Yep. That's where we all met.
But real quick, you know what? Blood and Snow hasn't been the only thing that you've worked on. You were a collaborator on Bearcats. In fact, Sally looks remarkably similar.
Yep. You have the PDF. You guys will notice the haircut.
It's there.
It's there. Yep. I'm sorry, the student.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
but you'll always be Sally to me, Kelsey. And then you have also worked in the Magic book as well. You did some writing and adventure design for Magic as well.
Yes, I got to do that. I wrote Orvold's Tower. Same thing where we were doing like a collaborative writing thing, and like I kind of knew what we were aiming at and some of the key moments. And I wrote out the adventure, and I designed the much controversied spell Blood Mist, which is both good and bad. I stand behind. I love that it like damages and heals. We've used it in such weird situations, but. That was a really fun one.
I still have memories when I think Magic was just coming out. Gosh, this was such a long time ago. The Prisoners campaign, the first game that I got to run for you guys.
Yeah.
Those opening moments where I'm pretty sure, I think it was Ren was down. Alex, that was you.
Mm-hmm.
And Kelsey, you came in with, was it Angara? And blood misted yourself to get him back on his feet. And I was like, oh, what the hell am I going to do here? These guys are freaking beast moding this whole adventure. And that was, I still remember that moment because it was so good. It was so like just epic and heartfelt. Like I cast blood mist on myself.
I never intended the spell to be used that way either. And then I was like, wait a minute. Like it ended up saving our butts. And I'm so glad that it worked out that way.
Right. Sorry, I almost killed you guys.
Nah.
But you didn't.
Not until the end.
Yeah, right.
That was still epic too. That set up an enormous amount of really cool stuff that happened later on though. So
It absolutely did. It absolutely did.
Yeah, I mean, Magic stuff was great.
And in addition to all those contributions, you've been a frequent member or collaborator in terms of our Council of Mages. Old Hank frequently runs stuff past us, and we get a chance to weigh in and talk about some of the stuff that he's working on, which is just epic. But more importantly to me, you have been a player and a DM. Yes. Back since Blood and Snow. I think White Elk was our first game together.
Yeah.
Crazily enough, I was nervous about meeting you and playing with you because of how awesome you are. Like I was sweaty. No! My palms were sweaty.
Oh no, I was so nervous to meet you guys. I was like, these are like the best role players.
Yeah. Seriously.
And then literally probably hundreds of hours later, like we've been in and out of games together for years now.
Yeah.
Obviously, your Symbaroum campaign stands out. So for folks who don't know, you ran a Symbaroum campaign. It was in the Symbaroum setting, but we did not use the Symbaroum rules. We used index card RPG rules.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fantastic. It was wonderful. Like we had the best time.
Yes.
As the Queen's Guard, which was just great, and you fostered that so well. I'm just curious, maybe if just for our viewers, listeners, that you can talk a little bit about your approach, running a whole different setting, using a whole different rule set, and maybe some of your key takeaways or DM tips.
Yeah,
because it was great.
It was so fun, and I was so nervous to run for you guys, and like, I think as DMs we always look back on, we focus on what didn't go well, right, and what we could have improved upon. But I know at least when you two run, like rarely would I I can't even think of anything where I was like, oh, I don't know if that went well, but I think about that for my games all the time that I'm running. And I think that it was what gave the campaign legs was that you guys had a really strong vision for what kind of vibe we wanted, like we do this thing where when we're preparing a campaign all together, no matter who's running it, we kind of start preliminary role playing in, usually in Discord and kind of like character development. And it's very organic, right? Like we don't come in with these strong, I must be this way. Like sometimes my character idea will come up just to fill a gap suddenly that appears in the role playing, and so we did that and set up this really good platform for who you guys were and what was happening in the game world. So I didn't even have to do any work in that regard as the DM. I got to come in running like that, and I don't know if there's any better way to set up a campaign. I think that's my favorite way. So we already had conflict. We knew the world, and I basically just set you guys loose in a forest, knowing you had to try to find the princess, really, the queen who who you guys knew was probably alive but had been essentially spirited away into the forest and
Yeah, she was
for her own
ousted.
safety. Yeah.
Yep.
And so that's where we went with it. And man, I think some of the elements of that campaign that I thought were the strongest was we ended up having really good NPC development that like you guys engaged a lot with the NPCs and they ended up becoming like pretty rich characters in, I think, comparatively for what I sometimes normally run. And so like we kind of have this joking mantra where we're like, kill the NPC as soon as you can, like in our games, like this is sort of a joke. It's not true, but it's a kind of a funny mentality and for drama or for whatever reason. But you guys had a lot of really great interactions with NPCs that I think drove the story. And it's so funny though, because I kept trying to really get you guys with this one enemy, this like dragon evil guy named Memnon, who is now actually a god in Shadowdark. And you guys just kept crushing him. I was like, you guys crushing him. Yeah. And yeah, the Scatha, the spider.
Yep, Scatha.
Yeah, you guys, we had so much fun with her. I think she was one of my favorite parts. And like the witch and all that. And gosh, you guys kept absolutely obliterating Memnon. And I remember being like, I need to do better encounter design. I need to learn more of like Alex's jujitsu, but it was both really a fun learning experience and just really funny how you guys kept just like walking up to him in his like shadow dragon form and just like being so good that you guys would just crush him, and it was really funny and fun.
See,
I think
from your point of view, we just rolled in and like crushed him. From our point of view, like we were sweating our asses
scrapping
off,
for every inch. Well, that was.
You guys made it look easy, but yeah.
Well, that was mostly Xander, though, right? That was Xander and his brawler.
His character was iconic. I loved his character.
Yeah, Mal, his captain of the guard, Mal.
Yeah, who was like one-liners and like so tough and like would come through in the right moment with the right roll and. Oh, and the boss fight, like I thought you guys were gonna have a boss fight against this like evil boss spirit essentially, and you guys ended up blowing up the castle he was hiding in, like actually blowing it up with this huge fire spell.
In fairness, Hankrin, he spent like 10 rounds in a row banking effort.
Yep.
Yes.
So technically, Hankrin blew up the castle. The rest of us ran.
As far as like action economy, it was like, I mean, he devoted time.
Yeah.
It took
almost
so
the whole
much time.
game.
He was just doing that. And we were trying to keep him safe. Like, just keep building, just keep building. Like
you've heard of a double down. Like he quadrupled down. Like every round is like, guys, I've got a hold. I'm gonna put more energy into the ring. Like
yes.
And you guys were protecting him, like all around him, and letting him do that. And it was so cool. I loved that. And then what was going to be essentially a dungeon delve was actually a boss fight in a crater.
Right. It was awesome.
It was so funny. I loved it. I loved that you guys did that. It was so cool.
Well, you rocked it in the DM chair, to give us the freedom to be creative.